Bez Hashem, today's daf is Masech Nedarim Daf Nun, and we will begin on Daf Nun Mem Tesam Beis, and we are discussing Rabbi Yehuda. So Mem Tesam Beis about from the bottom. Okay, Devesi the Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi. You actually can go see his burial site in Israel. And he lived in the 100s, basically the 2nd century. He's a Tana, and the Gemara is describing here how poor he was, and the Gemara. I loved what the Gemara said. We ended off yesterday that his job was like a. I guess it seems to be like he was a porter in a hotel or something. He carried packages, and he would even carry a pitcher on his shoulder, probably to go to the Beis Medrash to have something to sit on. Maybe he couldn't afford to buy a chair in the Beis Medrash. So that was his job. And he was proud of it by saying, it's nice to be able to go to work. It's so beautiful to go to work. It's a great thing to have a job because that brings honor to the one that's employed by that job. So that's just a tremendous lesson we can learn from that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what we're saying. Then the Gemara says like this: the Beisi de Rabbi Yehuda, the wife of Rabbi Yehuda, 5 lines from the bottom, Mem Tesam Beis. The Beisi of Rabbi Yehuda, the wife of Rabbi Yehuda, Nafak Nakt Amra. The wife of Rabbi Yehuda went out and gathered wool. Hi, Stephen. We just began 5 lines from the bottom, Mem Tesam Beis. Okay. So it's about Rabbi Yehuda, how poor he was. So the wife of Rabbi Yehuda one time gathered wool, and of the glima de hutva, she made a very fine coat from it. She was handy, tichtig, and she took from wool. She made a coat. The problem is they only had one coat. So this brought nafke l'shuka mikasya bay. When she went out to the marketplace, she used the coat. The kad nafke Rabbi Yehuda letzaluye. When Rabbi Yehuda would go to daven, apparently he learned at home. So when he would actually go to pray, he would use the coat and use it as to pray. Apparently it's not a problem of using the same coat because it's a unisex coat and it's only a coat. It's not actually something like a suit or something like that. So the kad mechasi bey, he was so proud of this coat. He made his own bracha on this coat. Baruch she'atani me'il. God blessed that he wrapped me in this beautiful coat, this me'il, and he referred to that me'il is another name for one of the garments of the Kohen Gadol. So he viewed that this coat that he had was so precious to him, like a garment of the Kohen Gadol. And that's the idea of life, is not just to have things, but to be able to give attention and appreciation to what you have. And that's what he said. So the Gemara describes, but again, there was only one coat in the family. Zimnachada, one time, goes to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Tanisa. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, the Nasi, the prince, was decreed a fast day. And Rabbi Yehuda lo'asa lebeit Tanisa. He didn't come to the prayer where they were davening together for a Yom Tanis. Apparently, Rabbi Yehuda didn't go because he didn't have a coat to go out of his house. Probably was cold, and his wife was using the coat. Rabbi Warren used to tell the story that in the yeshiva, they didn't have money. There was only one bachur who had a tie, and they would pass the tie out to different bachurim who were dating at the same time. So the same idea over here. Yehuda didn't go to the tainis because his wife was using the coat. Amr lei islei kasuya, lo islei kasuya. He told them that the shluchim that came to him. They told Rabbi Shimon Gamliel that reason why Rabbi Yehuda didn't come to the day of the fast, to the prayer, is because he didn't have his coat. He doesn't have a coat. So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel shadale galima v'loy kabiel. So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel sent him a coat for Rabbi Yehuda to use, and he didn't accept it. Now we go to Daf Nun Omer Aleph. So Rabbi Yehuda did not accept the coat. So and not only that, this is something fantastic what the Gemara says. So Rabbi Yehuda wants to show that he doesn't accept gifts, even if God gives him a gift. The lead sifta, he lifted up the mat that he was sitting on, right? And he told the messenger of the Shimon Gamliel, who brought a new coat for him, he said, I'm not accepting the coat, but even look what's underneath my mat. And I don't want to benefit at all from this world. What was under the mat? So the Rashi says, look how wealthy I am. There was a mace underneath the mat, and all that place was full of gold coins. Somehow there was gold coins underneath his mat, and yet he didn't want to benefit from it. So whatever Cheshbon Rabbi Yehuda had, he felt that that he didn't want for him having a certain amount of wealth would be detrimental to his learning, and he didn't want to accept any gift, even if God sent him some coins to survive.
But he was also doing that to his wife, because had he used those gold coins, she would be able to go out.
Right, she would go out more often. I don't know. It's all right. It has right. That leads us to the next Gemara. It's funny that you brought that up, Stephen, because now I couldn't figure out what the connection to the next Gemara is. But the next Gemara talks about having a good wife who supports this idea of living in poverty.
There you go.
That's right. It's not for everybody. You got to know your wife before you attempt to do something like that. I will tell you, the Gemara says that. And this is good to, if you can have in your private life a Talmud Chacham that you know and that you help out as best as you can, who's lives, has a difficult time with Parnasa, because the Gemara says that such a Talmud Chacham, anytime he prays, his prayer is heard. So if you need something and you want somebody to pray on your behalf, that person can pray on your behalf and his tefillah are heard. So maybe Rabbi Yehuda was so important for him to come to the Beit Tefillah, because his prayer would have been heard in Shemayim and rain would have came. And the fact that he didn't come because he didn't have a coat, but that's the point of having him come. Anyway, back into the Gemara. Rabbi Kiva is Kadash Le Barate de Kalba Savua. As we know, he got engaged to the daughter of Kalba Savua. Kalba Savua was a very wealthy person during the second Beis Hamikdash, at the end of the second Beis Hamikdash. So apparently Rabbi Kiva lived at that time, at the end of the second Beis Hamikdash. So he got engaged to this rich shidduch. Shama Kalba Savua, Kalba Savua heard that his daughter wants to elope with this guy, this Amaretz, Rabbi Kiva. Adra no mikol nichsei. He made a neder that Rabbi Kiva should not be able to benefit from any of his possessions. So he just left the young couple on their own. If you get married, I'm not giving support. She went against her father's wishes and she got married. She found a rabbi to marry them. Besisva in the wintertime. So they got married in a winter wedding. So it probably was cheaper. So like you said, so she's from a wealthy home. The Gemara describes what her house looked like, but it was a palace. Now she marries this person and now she's living in a barn. Havigone Beitivna, they were living in a place that was probably unheated, and they were living on straw. And then when you sleep on straw enters your ear. So she loved her husband so much, Rabbi Akiva. She would pluck the straw out of his hair at night. I woke up in the morning. It was not honorable that he should go out with straw in his head. So she would pluck it out of his hair. Amalei, so he loved her so much, he said, if I could afford it, Raminulach Yerushalayim de Dahava, I would get you a crown or a necklace that was the Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, a golden Yerushalayim, probably like a model of Yerushalayim that you wear as a necklace. It showed an honor and distinction. It was like probably the most fanciest jewelry you can find in the store. Now, in the meantime, they're living in poverty. Asa Eliyahu. So Eliyahu HaNavi. Now, Eliyahu HaNavi is a type of somebody who anybody shows up, and he just gives you comfort during the time of trouble. That's Eliyahu HaNavi. Eliyahu HaNavi is not just telling you that Mashiach is here, but also when you're in an Eis Tzara, there's always an Eliyahu HaNavi that just makes you feel comfortable. And brings Shalom Bayis here. Idman Melei Kanasha. He sometimes appears like a human being. So Eliyahu HaNavi came, the Kokore Ababa knocked on their door where Rabbi Kiva and his wife lived. Amalahu, he said to them, Havali put the tivna, please can you give me some straw? the lilat it to say, my wife just gave birth, the lace li midam lagune, and I have no straw for her to lie down. I have no, because I live in an open cellar and there's no straw there. So can I borrow some? Can you give us some straw? So Amalei Rabbi Kiva, Amallah Rabbi Kivas, Rabbi Kiva told to say to his own wife, Chazu Gavra, can't you see this man? He's much worse than us because he doesn't even have straw. So that brought comfort to them. At least they're not the poorest people. Amrulay, she said to him, Zil Habe Beirav, I want you to go to yeshiva. I married you. I want you to go to yeshiva. And he agreed. Azl Tartis Rishnin, the Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua. He went for 12 years to learn in Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua's yeshiva. Lemishnan Tartis Rishnin, after the end of 12 years, he came home. You know, the yeshiva's man ended after 12 years. Before he entered the house, he heard from the back of his house, that one Russia said to his wife. Now, the reason he's a Russia is anybody who mixes into somebody else's business, right? They don't know how to stay in their own lane. Is a Russia described in the Gemara. So one Russia told his wife, he said, how could you marry such a guy? Your father is correct by just writing you off the will. Why? Because this guy that you marry, this Rabbi Kiva, there's two problems with him. The loy damilach, he's no that you're not compatible with each other, wealth-wise, and also Rabbi Kiva's lineage is from converts. So Rabbi Kiva came from Gerim. And you come from a lineage, a special family in Klal Yisrael. So wealth, you're not in the same class. And not only that, he left you like a live widow all these years. I mean, who goes to learn for 12 years, doesn't show up? She said to him, and she never saw her husband, if he's listening to me, I want him to go back and learn another 12 years. So the truth is, Rabbi Kiva could have knocked on the door and said, hello. Rabbi Kiva is outside overhearing this conversation. And he doesn't knock on the door to say, hey, I'm here. He just turns around and goes back to learn. And that's what they say, because learning has to be done with straightness, without interruption. That's a much stronger learning. If Rabbi Kiva would have interrupted the 12 years by saying hello to his wife, he wouldn't have been Rabbi Akiva. 12 plus 12 is not 24. So this is what Rabbi Kiva said. Omar, he said to himself, I see my wife is okay with this. I'm turning around. And he became and learned for another 12 years. So another 12 years, Rabbi Akiva is learning. He came after 24 Alfei Zugi Talmidei. He came with 24,000 Talmidim. So apparently not only he grew in Torah individually, but he's actually a teacher of 24,000 pairs of Zugi Talmidim. So it must be 48,000. So when he came back to visit his wife at the end of the term of 24 years, everybody went out to greet him. But even his wife, his wife also wanted to go greet her husband is coming back as a successful teacher and leader of the Jewish people. So this never-ending friend who's called the Russia, again, not minding his own business or her own business. Where are you going? He asks the wife of Rabbi Kiva. I mean, you're not even dressed properly to go greet Rabbi Akiva. Now, it's not clear that she knew that the person coming to town was her husband. Maybe let's learn that she didn't know it was her husband. She knew a great rabbi is coming to the town. So Amrullah, she's told this Russia, Yedei Tzadik Nefesh Behemtai. A tzaddik can know the inside of a person. It's an expression. A tzaddik understands even the soul of an animal. Who looks at an animal and sees a soul? Somebody who's righteous and somebody who's like a big tzaddik can see inside of an individual. And therefore, he said, if this person is a big tzaddik, she will see what kind of sacrifice I gave for my husband and what my insides are all about, even though I'm not properly dressed because I can't afford it. She wanted to appear before Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbanan had no idea this is the wife of Rabbi Akiva. They pushed her away because it's not respectful for such a woman in rags who looks homeless to come visit Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Kiva recognized her and said to his student, Hanichala, let her come. Shali, my learning, v'shalachem, and your learning, shalah, who belongs to her. So this is like one of the most famous statements in Shas, that she said, all that we have and all that you have all belongs to her self-sacrifice. Shama Kalba Savua heard that her son-in-law turned out to be the great rabbi that he was, and the great Tana, and one of the greatest people of Klal Yisrael of all time. So he heard about it, and he wanted to figure out a way to benefit Rabbi Akiva from his wealth. So because he wanted because he was proud now of his son-in-law. Okay, behind every successful son-in-law is a shocked father-in-law or mother-in-law. So, but he wanted to be mater his neder. Also, the itchel on nidri. So he came to ask, how could I undo and make a dissolution on my vow? So the only way to do it, he can't do it with charata, because a charata means you regret making it. But he was in a very clear state of mind when he made the neder. So he wasn't like in an angry mood when he made the neder. So how could you be mater this neder? So the only way that can be mater this neder is something he wasn't aware of. What wasn't he aware of? That his son-in-law had the potential to become a great person. And he probably said that if my son, I know he could do it, if he would learn one halacha or one perek, I would have never made a neder against him. I just saw he was such an amoritz that he didn't want to learn anything. So it's not like a shock because there was always a possibility that he could at least learn one halacha and one become somewhat learned. So therefore, it was considered a Pesach, an opening, and they got people together, including Rabbi Kiva, and they were mater neder. So that's how Rabbi Kiva benefited from his father's wealth. Now here the Gemara goes on and tells you some fantastic stories about Rabbi Akiva, and it's almost like hard to believe. But I don't know what the point of how Rabbi Akiva became wealthy. What you do see is Rabbi Akiva became wealthy, and then he became poor in his life, and then he became wealthy. So that's what you see all about Rabbi Akiva's life. So the Gemara says like this. Let's get it a little bigger. Min shit mili iata Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva had 6 times where he became super wealthy. So, for a joke, they say that Rabbi Kiva had 24,000 Talmidim. So if you have 24,000 students paying tuition, obviously you become wealthy. But the Gemara says no, he taught for free. So then how did he become wealthy? So the Gemara gives you 6 times he became wealthy. Min Kalba Savua. The Gemara tells you from Kalba Savua, his father-in-law, that's how he became wealthy. He inherited. I guess after the second base of Migdash was destroyed, his father-in-law's wealth disappeared. Then the Gemara tells you, Min Eilan the Svita, the story about Eila, there was a ram on a ship. They used to have an ornament of a ram on a ship. Now, picture a ram at the bow of a ship, and that was a symbol that this ship should, have easy sailing, smooth waters. The Gemara tells, so what happened? They used to make this sculpture of this Eila, of this ram, every ship. One time, it washed up. It washed up on the beach. Now, Asahu, so Rabbi Kiva was taking a walk by the beach, Ashkache, and he found it. Now, inside of it, it turned out there was full of money in there. It was like, as luck, they would put money into this ornament that was supposed to be on a ship. And again, it somehow washed up ashore, and Rabbi Kiva found it. So he became wealthy that way. Mingavza, from a log. What does that mean? Zimna Chada, one time, Rabbi Kiva, Yov Arba Zize Lisapune. He gave 4 zuzim for sailors. Apparently, he funded it like an expedition, that they should bring him back something from overseas. Oz Amalahu Isali Midam, bring me something interesting. When you travel overseas, bring me back something. But the sailors did not find something, Elagavza al Kefs Yama. They found this log on a beach. So they took it back, Asiyale, they brought it to Rabbi Kiva in exchange for funding their expedition. Amr Lay, and they said to them, they were embarrassed. They came back with just a piece of wood. Avdim Arana Alay. We're going to go back and see if we can find something better for you, because we weren't successful. Ishtakach, they found the Hava Mili Diniri. He banged open the log, and it was a chest full of money. Now, where did this log come full of money? The Zimnachad, one time, Tavas Vinte, a ship sank. This turned out that the entire wealth of the ship was put into this log. So this log was like the safe of the ship, right? The safe of the ship, and that washed up a store. And they found it at that time. And the sailors that found it didn't know what they found, but they gave it to Rabbi Kiva. When he cracked it open, it was full of money. And who owned the ship? The Min Suriki Shisa. So on the side, the ship was owned, that sank, was from Yishmaelim, Orchas Yishmaelim. It's interesting. I know, Alan, you like to look for hints in the Parsha during the Daf Yomi, and here you have it. Orchas Yishmaelim. So this ship belonged to Yishmaelim. They put all their money in a safe of a log. It washed up ashore. Rabbi Kiva found it. So this is another source of how Rabbi Kiva became wealthy. Number 4 is Mimatranisa. He became wealthy from a Roman maiden, like a very fancy, like a princess in the Roman Empire. What does that mean? So let's see. I'm going to do the Rashi, because the Gemara doesn't tell you the story. I'm just going to read the Rashi on the side, but I'll just read you just parts of it and read out this and talk out the story. There was one time the Chachamim needed money to build a base medrash, and they asked Rabbi Kiva to go to this lady who had a very prominent position in government and borrow it. So when she gave Rabbi Kiva the loan, she says, "Who's going to guarantee the payment?" So of course, you go for membership dues. It's not going to cover the cost of the loan. So he said to her, "I guarantee it," and she said, I need a guarantor. So Rabbi Kiva told her that God will be the guarantor. Okay, and she and the sea is going to be a guarantor, because she lived by the beach. She probably lived somewhere in Long Island or something. So, and Rabbi Kiva said, "I agree." When it came time to pay back, and Rabbi Kiva got very sick and he could not bring her the money. So she went for a walk on the beach, and she said to God, "Listen, God, you know that you own the sea, the ocean, and I trusted you, if Rabbi Kiva can't pay back, that you're going to pay back this loan." At that time, God made it that the Roman emperor's daughter went insane. Okay, all these emperors were insane somewhat, and she went into her father's treasury, and she took a bunch of the wealth there, gold and silver coins and everything like that, and threw it into the sea, and it washed up ashore right by this lady, the lady that made the loan, this banker, and she took it, and then she brought Rabbi Kiva the money. And Rabbi Kiva said, Rabbi Kiva actually got better and brought her the money to pay back the loan. She said, "God, don't be angry. Your loan was paid back. God paid it back. And not only that, I'm just going to take back what you borrowed from me and I'm giving you back all the rest of the wealth that I found at the beach." So, and she said goodbye to Rabbi Kiva. So that's another way Rabbi Kiva became wealthy. Then let's go to Nun Amabez. Number 5, the way Rabbi Kiva became wealthy, min ishtoi shel Turnus Rafis, who is from the wife of Turnus Rafis. Fascinating story that is brought down in the Ran and Rashi, there was a person named Rufus, okay? And he would definitely debate Rabbi Akiva in front of the Caesar. Maybe it was Marcus Aurelius. I don't know who would be interested in what Jewish philosophy is. But Rabbi Akiva always won the debate. So one time, he came home angry, this Rufus, and his wife asked her, "Why are you so angry?" Because he says, "I keep losing the debate to Rabbi Akiva." So she said to her husband, "Listen, I know that Rabbi Kiva's God hates znus. Give me permission, and I'm going to try to entice him in a devar avera. I'll try to entice him to do adultery." So she went and met Rabbi Akiva, and she tried to entice Rabbi Akiva into a situation of adultery. Rabbi Akiva saw her. He did three things: he spit, he laughed at her, and cried at her. So she's, obviously he didn't want to do it with her, but she asked, "What are you doing all these three things?" So she said, "I'll explain you two of them. The reason why I spit, because that blocked away any taiva I have to you, because I recognize that you come from spit, because you come from a tipa serucha." Basically, he tried to have an image of a repulsive image in his head so that he wouldn't be enticed by this sexual arousal. The second thing, why did he cry? So he cried because she was a beautiful woman, and he said that, it's a shame that this beautiful woman is going to end up in the grave. So that's why he cried. And the third reason, he said, then she asked him, why are you laughing? And she says, "That I can't tell you. When laughing, I can't tell you, because I laughed is a private matter." So she didn't understand it, but she asked, "Can I do repentance for what I wanted to do to you?" She said, "Yes, you can do repentance." She went, did tshuva. Not only that, she became a ger. And she became a ger, and that's why Rabbi Kiva laughed, because she ended up turning into Rabbi Akiva's wife. Rabbi Kiva married her. And since she came from Rufus, and Rufus, her previous husband, had a lot of money, so Rabbi Kiva became the new owner of his wife's wealth. So that's number 5. That's the 5th way Rabbi Kiva became rich. The final way, and this is not brought in the Gemaras, it's brought in the Ram, the Rishonim bring it. So they had a tradition that was the story. Finally, the Gemara says, "Min Katia Bar Shalom." From a story about Katia Bar Shalom is another way Rabbi Kiva became rich. Number 6, that is in Masechta Avodah Zarah. Outside, it means that this Katia Bar Shalom was in the Senate, the Roman Senate. And the emperor was questioning the Senate, asking them, should I get rid of the Jews? He hated Jews, this Roman Senate. So the Katia Bar Shalom was part of the Roman Senate, and he advised, everybody agreed with the emperor that it's, kill out all the Jewish people. But he advised, this Katia Bar Shalom said, the Jews are very much needed in society. Just like the world cannot survive without wind, the world cannot survive without Jews. So he convinced the emperor not to do what he wanted to do. So the emperor said, the emperor said that you make perfect sense. The emperor said that you make perfect sense, but I cannot, because you try to outdo the Roman senator and out-debate the Roman senator, you have to be killed. So that's the risk of working in the Senate. So while they were taking him out to be killed, some people said, you're getting killed because you were defending Jewish people. So might as well join them. So he says, you're right. At that point, I don't know, the Gemara says that he gave himself a bris milah. He bit off the arla of to give himself a circumcision, and they didn't confiscate his wealth. His wealth still belonged to him, and he gave it all to Rabbi Kiva. And Rabbi Kiva split it with the wealth with his friends and took half. That's what the Gemara says. So the Gemara just tells you 6 fantastic stories of how Rabbi Kiva became wealthy. What I learned from this is that Rabbi Kiva went from rags to riches, then he probably went to rags to riches, and he became wealthy, fantastic in fantastic ways, which shows the power of Torah that really controls the economy, and it belonged to somebody like Rabbi Kiva, the greatest Tana of all time. The Gemara continues and says, Rav Gamda Yavle Dalet Zuze Le Sapuna. Again, a fantastic story. This Rav Gamda, I don't remember seeing him ever in the Talmud, but this Rav Gamda actually gave 4 zuzim to sailors. Again, he funded an expedition, La Tuye behind Midam, to bring him something back. They didn't find anything to bring him back. Asid le behind Kufa. So they brought for him a monkey. They said, "Oh, we found this, exotic monkey." Ishtamit al Kharta, and the monkey started running away, and it ran to a hole somewhere. Chafru by say they tried to dig into the hole to get the monkey back. Ashkeche, they found that the monkey, the Ravia Amagalisa, he's sitting on a pile of pearls. Asinin Leilakulin, they gave Rav Gamda all of it, even though they could have taken some of it for themselves. They decided to give everything to Rav Gamda. As the Ram explains, they did this as a Midas Chasidus. They didn't have to tell Rav Gamda that the monkey discovered pearls, but they recognized they don't want to mess with Rav Gamda. So that's how Rav Gamda became wealthy. Now the Gemara says, just conversations that the Caesars had, or the daughter of the Caesars had with some of the Tanoim. Amr le bas Kezel Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. The daughter of the Caesar said to Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, who was a person who didn't dress fancy. He was poor, a blacksmith, as you remember, and he didn't dress fancy. So Torah Mufaeris Bikli Mechur, Torah is so beautiful. I see you're one of the greatest of the Tanoim, and yet you dress in disgusting clothing. It's not respectful. Amalei, so he told Rabbi, the daughter of the Caesar, Limdi mi beis avich. You could learn this lesson from your father's house, the Caesar. Where do they put the emperor's wine? Amalei, so she said, B'mani dafachra. In earthenware jugs, in earthenware barrels, that's how they store my father's wine. Amalei. So Rabbi Shimon Chananya said, Kula alma b'farcha, ba'atim b'mani defachra. Everybody stores their wine in earthenware barrels. And you, the Caesar, should not be afford something better to put the wine in? What, you're using earthenware barrels? You should put the wine, store your wine in barrels of gold and silver. She put the wine in gold and silver barrels. Usri, and as you can expect, it all spoiled. It all spoiled, and the wine was unusable. So after this lesson was learned, he taught her when it comes to Torah, it's that way. That a Torah, you can't expect someone who's such a great person in Torah to be caring so much on the way he looks and his appearances. So the Gemara, so she asked him a question, Va'ika Shapira and Gemira, but I know such beautiful people, they dress them meticulously, first class, and they're very learned. So he said his philosophy, Rabbi Yeshua said, my philosophy is, if they would hate appearances, or they would have been even more learned. And the idea is that as the whole Torah, to be able to acquire Torah, you need to break your ego. In other words, you need to break of what makes you important, what gives you self-importance. So if it's clothing that you wear, or if the way you look, or how handsome you are, so you have something of an ego. And because of that, you cannot acquire the Torah. So the way that his philosophy of the acquisition of Torah was to break that ego. And he said that if those Talmidei Chachamim would be more hateful the way their appearance was, and they didn't pay too much attention, they would have been even greater people in learning. There was this lady that came to this Rabbi Yehuda from Nardai for a din Torah. Right? So she came to for Rabbi Yehuda. This is the Amora Rabbi Yehuda, not what we were talking about Rabbi Yehuda in the beginning of the Mara. She was found guilty in the judgment. Amar lei, so she said, Shmuel Rabcha Hochi Danin, would your Shmuel, your teacher, have judged me the same way, found me guilty, that I lose the judgment? Amar la, so Rabbi Yehuda said to her, Yadatle, do you know my Rebbe Shmuel? Amar lei in. I know your Rebbe Shmuel, yes. So he's very short. Varabba crazy, he has a pot belly. Ukam, he's dark. Varabba shina, and he has a big white teeth. He eats a lot. Amallah, he said to her, La verzus ka'asa, you're coming to degrade him? To have it's a b'shamta. Let's put this woman in excommunication. Paka, she busted. Umesa, she died. She had an aneurysm and died suddenly. But basically, what the Gemara is trying to describe in a side way of how Shmuel looked. We have this opinion that he looked like, some person with a nice white beard and very handsome face and everything like that. And this is the way she described him, which was probably accurate. But nevertheless, that's how he was able to, Reb Shmuel, to become the greatest of Amoraim and acquiring Torah. Two more just things, small things, and then we'll stop. The Mishnah said that if you make a neder that you're not going to eat a hot dish, I make a neder, all hot dishes are also to me, you're permitted to eat this beya turmita, an egg that's not cooked. Now, it's not a soft-boiled egg, it's not a hard-boiled egg, so the Gemara wants to know, my beitza turmita, what is this egg of turmita? Amar Shmuel said, if you have a slave that knows how to make this beitza turmita, he's worth 1,000 dinar because it's a very hard process to make it. What do you do with it? You take the egg, you put it alpha zimna b'maya chamima, you put it in 1,000 times in hot water, the alpha zimna b'maya karire, and you put it 1,000 times into cold water. What are you gaining with that? It's not cooking. It's not. You're putting it into cold water right afterwards. You're trying to get ad de mis zutra until the egg becomes shrink. You want the egg to shrink. Now, what's the point of the egg shrinking? Because you're using it, fascinating, you're using it as a diagnostic. How do you diagnose? You want this person to swallow the egg like a capsule. Then if he has a legion, a parasite or whatever, surich Allah, it will become attached to this egg. And then the kadnafke, when it leaves the body, when it goes to the bathroom, va'asya, and it comes out. So you bring that egg to a doctor. Yoda asya my sama mitbayale my mitase. The doctor will know based on religion what kind of sickness is this and how to heal him. So basically, if a person had an internal problem, they didn't have X-rays or ways to diagnose what's going on inside and how to properly treat it. So that this was an egg that you swallowed that was a shrunken egg like a capsule that went to your stomach, and the legion attached to it. And then it came out when you went to the bathroom, so they were able to see what's doing inside your stomach. The Gemara says a fascinating conclusion. Shmuel, without anesthesia, okay, he had a problem, and Shmuel himself was a doctor, but he had to diagnose what's going on inside of him. Havabodik nafshei bekulcha. He would use, let's say, a stalk. I think he had a catheter that he would stick inside of himself. And it caused him a lot of pain, and his family saw how much pain he was, and they couldn't do anything about it. His family would rip their own hair out because they saw how Shmuel was in pain. But basically, this is how they figured out what's going on inside of the person, so they could diagnose correctly and treat correctly. So then we'll continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow with the Gemara. But again, fascinating Gemara that we learned tonight.
Baruch, 2 questions.